Prince's fight with the music industry wasn't just about music. It was about power. It was about control over art, identity, and truth. From the very beginning of his career, he understood something that most artists didn't learn until it was too late. The moment you sign a contract, you're not just giving away percentages of money, you're giving away pieces of yourself. In 1977, an 18-year-old Prince Rogers Nelson signed his first record deal with Warner Brothers. For a kid from Minneapolis, this was the dream. Warner had the resources, the connections, the global reach. On paper, the deal was everything he could ever want. But what he didn't realize was that Warner wasn't just signing Prince the artist. They were signing Prince the man. They controlled his music, his name, his future. They wrapped their claws around everything he created. At first, Prince played the role. He put out albums between 1978 and 1981, and while they didn't break records, Warner kept him. They saw him as an investment. And by 1982, when MTV exploded onto the scene, Prince saw his moment. Unlike most artists of the time, Prince wasn't just making music, he was building mythology. Every video, every performance, every outfit was calculated to create a legend. He knew exactly what he was doing. By 1984, with the release of Purple Rain, he had arrived. Prince wasn't just a pop star. He was the pop star. He was electrifying, dangerous, unpredictable. He blurred gender, style, and sound in ways nobody else dared. And for Warner Brothers, he was a goldmine. But success only made the chains tighter. Prince wanted freedom, and Warner wanted control. When he set up his own label, Paisley Park Records, he thought it would buy him independence. But Warner still handled the distribution, which meant they still pulled the strings. Prince had built his empire, but he didn't truly own it. The more he tried to assert himself, the more Warner pushed back. By the mid-1990s, the relationship was toxic. He wanted out. He wanted his masters. Warner said no. That's when Prince decided to go public. He appeared in interviews with the word slave written across his face. He changed his name to an unpronounceable symbol, forcing media outlets to call him the artist formerly known as Prince. To the public, it looked eccentric, maybe even crazy, but to Prince, it was a revolution. He wasn't just fighting for himself, he was fighting for every artist trapped in contracts designed to exploit. He told fans bluntly, if they're just a delivery service, then fine. But even FedEx doesn't say they own the thing they ship. That one line summed up everything wrong with the system. Labels weren't just distributing music, they were owning it. They were owning the artist. Warner wasn't about to budge. When Prince demanded to buy back his masters, they flatly refused. So Prince threatened to re-record everything, to flood the market with new versions of his own songs. It was an audacious move, the kind of move only Prince could pull, and it terrified the industry. If Prince could break free, if Prince could prove that an artist didn't need the machine, others would follow. But Warner wasn't the only force in play. At the same time, Prince was fighting for his life's work. Another figure was rising inside the very system he was trying to dismantle, Sean Diddy Combs. And while Prince was branding himself a slave, Diddy was cutting deals with Warner, ensuring his empire grew stronger. While Prince was clawing for independence, Sean Diddy Combs was climbing the ladder in the opposite way. Where Prince rebelled against the system, Diddy embraced it, molded it, and thrived inside of it. And at the center of it all was Warner Brothers, the very company that Prince was calling out as an oppressor. In the 1990s, Bad Boy Records was everywhere. Biggie, Mass, Faith Evans, Diddy turned them all into household names. But behind the glitz, the contracts told a different story. Former Bad Boy artists have described the label as a machine that squeezed every drop of value out of them, then tossed them aside. Many claim they saw barely a dime from the millions their music generated. This is where the connection to Warner Brothers becomes impossible to ignore. Warner signed a joint venture with Diddy, giving them a 50% stake in Bad Boy Records. The deal meant Warner had the distribution power, while Diddy controlled the artists. Together, they created a cycle. The label made money, the executive made money, and the artist, usually left with scrap. For Prince, this must have felt like deja vu. The very battles he fought, ownership, freedom, creative rights, were the same traps he saw Diddy allegedly laying for his own roster. And while Prince screamed from the rooftops about contracts and masters, Diddy was doubling down on the system, proving just how profitable exploitation could be. But this wasn't just about business. Allegedly, Prince wanted nothing to do with Diddy's personal world either. The stories about Diddy's infamous parties have been whispered for years, and one detail ties Prince directly to them. Jason Lee once revealed that the very first Diddy party he attended was hosted at Prince's house. Imagine that, the same home where Prince composed music that defines generations, used as the backdrop for one of Diddy's late-night spectacles. Therese was performing. Demi Moore and Ashton Kutcher were swinging on literal swings, and the entire vibe was surreal. But the strangest rule of all, guests weren't allowed to bring their own security. For most people, it was just a party quirk. For Prince, a man obsessed with privacy and control, it was a glaring red flag. He lent the house, but he didn't show up. He wanted no part of it. It's easy to wonder if Prince already sensed what was really happening behind those doors. Diddy's parties weren't like anyone else's. They weren't like Jamie Foxx's casual celebrity gatherings. They had rules, restrictions, secrecy. And secrecy always breeds suspicion. Prince was cautious, and that caution might have saved him from being pulled deeper into Diddy's orbit. But while he kept his distance from the parties, he couldn't escape the industry web that tied Diddy, Warner, and later Jay-Z together. The machine had many faces, and Prince would come to learn that even allies could turn into adversaries. Diddy's rise looked glamorous on the outside. He was the flashy mogul, the life of the party, the man who turned hip-hop into high fashion. But if you ask the artists who built Bad Boy Records from the ground up, the story isn't as pretty. Take Mess, for example. He was one of Bad Boy's biggest stars in the late 90s. But behind the hits, he claimed Diddy was taking far more than his fair share. In interviews, Mess said he asked to buy back his publishing rights for $2 million, rights that had already made Diddy tens of millions. Diddy refused unless Mess matched the highest bidder. To Mess, this wasn't business. It was betrayal. He said, "You keep screaming black excellence, but it's not excellence if you're robbing the people that helped you build it." Then there's the Lox, a group known for their gritty street rap. They went public with their frustrations, accusing Diddy of exploiting them with unfair contracts. At one point, they even launched the Free the Lox campaign, with fans wearing t-shirts and demanding their release from Bad Boy. The group said they were making pennies while Diddy was stacking millions. It got so heated that a member of the Lox confronted Diddy on live radio, telling him flat out that he was a crook. And it wasn't just rappers. Danity Kane, the girl group formed on Diddy's MTV reality show Making the Band, told a similar story. They spent years performing in skimpy outfits, selling out shows, and generating millions for the label. Yet, when the group split, they revealed they hadn't seen a real paycheck. One member even said, "We were in thongs and 5-inch heels for years of our lives and didn't see a penny of it." Meanwhile, reality stars from shows like Jersey Shore, who had nowhere near the same impact, were raking in millions. Former Bad Boy singer Mario Winans admitted the same thing. He barely saw royalties from his work. Even Faith Evans, Biggie's widow and one of Bad Boy's first ladies, hinted at how the label held on to things that should have belonged to the artists. The pattern was clear. Diddy thrived by holding the keys to ownership, while the people who actually created the music were left fighting for scraps. It was the same cycle Prince had been warning about for decades. The machine doesn't just use you, it drains you, spits you out, and dares you to fight back. For Prince, watching this unfold had to be maddening. He knew exactly how it felt to pour your soul into music, only for the paperwork to erase your rights. And to see Diddy, another black man, another artist, turn into the very machine he once fought against, that must have cut deep. But Prince's connection to Diddy wasn't only business. The parties were just as infamous as the contracts. And when Jason Lee described the first Diddy party he ever attended, hosted at Prince's house, the details didn't sit right. Why would Prince, a man known for being meticulous about his space, allow his sanctuary to be used for something so chaotic? Maybe he didn't fully know what was happening, or maybe he did, and that's why he stayed far away. What stood out most was the rule about security. No guest was allowed to bring their own guards inside. That wasn't normal. At Hollywood parties, celebrities often travel with bodyguards. It's standard. But not at Diddy's parties. That kind of control creates an environment where anything could happen behind closed doors, and nobody on the outside would know. Prince was private, cautious, and highly protective of his legacy. It's no wonder he kept his distance. He may have loaned his house, but he didn't step foot into that scene. Maybe he already sensed that Diddy's world was dangerous, not just for reputations, but for lives. And yet, even when Prince stayed away from the lifestyle, the industry still pulled him back in. Because one of Diddy's closest allies, Jay-Z, would soon cross paths with Prince in a way that left both fans and lawyers stunned. Prince had spent decades fighting Warner, but when streaming began to take over the industry, he made what seemed like a surprising move. He placed his trust in Jay-Z. On paper, it made sense. Jay-Z wasn't just a rapper. He was a businessman, a mogul who marketed himself as a champion of artists' rights. His streaming service, Tidal, was advertised as the anti-Spotify, the anti-Apple Music. Unlike the corporate giants, Tidal was supposed to give musicians a fair share of the money their art generated. For someone like Prince, who had spent his whole career fighting for ownership, it seemed like the perfect partnership. For a brief moment, it looked like it was working. In 2015, Prince gave Tidal an exclusive 90-day license to stream his new music, including the album Hit and Run Phase 1. The move was bold. Prince was essentially saying, if I'm going to stream anywhere, it'll be with someone I trust. Jay-Z even praised Prince for being a revolutionary artist who stood for independence. But the honeymoon didn't last. By 2016, Prince's estate had filed a lawsuit against Roc Nation, Jay-Z's company, accusing them of overstepping the agreement. Tidal wasn't just streaming H and Run. They had uploaded 15 of Prince's classic albums, works that were never part of the deal. The lawsuit alleged that Roc Nation had fabricated paperwork to make it look like Prince had given them permission. In reality, his estate argued the agreement was only for that one album. Not only that, but there was no evidence Prince ever received the equity in Tidal that Jay-Z claimed he was granted. For Prince's estate, this was theft, just another example of the machine taking what didn't belong to it. For Jay-Z and Tidal, it was business. They argued they had oral agreements, implied contracts, and that Prince himself had been on board. But without proof, their defense fell apart. To fans, the entire episode was proof that Prince had been right all along. Even someone like Jay-Z, who branded himself as an advocate for artists, couldn't resist the temptation to bend the rules when millions were on the line. And if you look at the bigger picture, it becomes even harder to ignore. Jay-Z wasn't just a business partner. He was also one of Diddy's closest allies. The same Diddy whose parties Prince refused to attend. The same Diddy who had cut deals with Warner while Prince was calling the company a plantation. Suddenly, Prince wasn't just battling faceless corporations anymore. He was battling individuals who looked like him, who spoke like him, who claimed to fight for the same things he did. The betrayal hurt more because it came from within. Prince believed in Jay-Z. He thought Tidal was different, but in the end, he found himself in court, once again fighting for control over music he had already created decades earlier. This was the cycle Prince warned us about. You can change the technology, you can change the names of the companies, but the game stays the same. Ownership is power, and power never lets go willingly. For Prince, the Tidal lawsuit was another reminder that the industry couldn't be trusted. But instead of retreating quietly, he kept speaking out, louder than ever. He knew the risks, and as we'll see, those risks may have caught up with him. By the time the Tidal lawsuit hit the headlines, Prince's message to the world couldn't have been clearer. The music industry was a machine designed to exploit, and unlike most artists, he didn't whisper it in backrooms. He shouted it from every stage he stepped on. At award shows where most artists smiled and thanked their labels, Prince flipped the script. He looked out at audiences filled with executives, sponsors, and celebrities, and told them bluntly, if you play their game, you'll lose. Play your own game. It wasn't just advice, it was a warning. In interviews, he compared record labels to plantations. He said contracts weren't partnerships, they were chains. The word slave across his cheek wasn't just a stunt, it was the truest description of how he felt. Artists weren't free, they were property. Even their names, their identities, were controlled once the ink dried on the paper. He warned other artists not to fall for the illusion of fame. He told them that most of the money they thought they'd earn would never reach their pockets. The labels always found a way to siphon it off, whether through advances, marketing costs, or outright manipulation. In 1999, long before streaming changed the game, Prince said he planned to re-record his entire catalog to get around Warner's ownership. His reasoning was simple. If they refused to sell him back his masters, he'd just make new ones. It was bold, defiant, and dangerous. No major artist had ever challenged the system like that. And it wasn't just the labels. In 2007, Prince announced he was going to take legal action against YouTube, eBay, and even the Pirate Bay for using his music without permission. At the time, people laughed. They called him old-fashioned, out of touch, unwilling to adapt to the new digital era. But years later, as artists like Taylor Swift and Kanye West fought similar battles with streaming platforms, Prince looked more like a prophet than a relic. One of his most famous speeches came when he accepted an award and told the crowd, record contracts are just like slavery. I would like to say thank you to God, but also to ask one favor of you. Imagine what it would be like if we all played in our own game. The audience clapped politely, but you could tell the message unsettled people. Prince wasn't saying what was expected. He was saying what was true. He kept doubling down. In another interview, he said, "You're going to take a minority share of the winnings. A select few of us will do well. The majority will not." That's how the system worked. He wasn't just talking about music contracts anymore. He was talking about how power operates in every corner of society. To fans, Prince was more than a musician at this point. He was a truth teller. He was the rare artist who wasn't afraid to risk everything to expose the corruption everyone else tiptoed around. And the more he spoke, the more it seemed like he knew exactly how dangerous this path was becoming. Because the machine doesn't forgive. The machine doesn't forget. And anyone who stands in its way is eventually forced to pay a price. Prince wasn't just warning us about contracts. He was warning us about survival, and whether he knew it or not. Those warnings were building toward the most suspicious chapter of his life, his sudden, shocking death. On April 21st, 2016, the world woke up to devastating news. Prince was gone. He was just 57 years old, found unresponsive in an elevator inside his Paisley Park estate. Fans were stunned. How could a man who seemed almost superhuman A man who had spent decades defying the system suddenly vanished overnight. The official story was simple on paper. Authorities claimed Prince had died of an accidental fentanyl overdose. According to investigators, he had unknowingly taken counterfeit Vicodin pills laced with one of the most powerful synthetic opioids on earth. The drug was so potent that just a few grains could kill a person. But from the very beginning, something about the story didn't add up. Prince wasn't the type of man you'd expect to fall victim to drugs. He was famously health conscious, vegan, clean living, and known for avoiding alcohol and narcotics altogether. Friends described him as disciplined, focused, and meticulous about his body. He wasn't reckless, he was careful. Just weeks before his death, Prince had made an emergency landing while flying home from a show. Reports later claimed he had overdosed on the same painkillers. Yet even after that scare, he was not placed under close medical supervision. How does one of the most famous artists in the world, a man with unlimited resources, not have a team of doctors around him after something that serious? Why was he left vulnerable? And then there was the location. Prince's body was found in an elevator. For most people, that was just a detail. But to fans who knew his music, it was a chilling symbol. Years earlier, in his iconic song, Let's Go Crazy, he warned, "Don't let the elevator bring us down." And in a private conversation with a friend, he allegedly explained, "Do you know what the elevator is? It's the devil." That single line became haunting after his death. Prince wasn't just found in any room of Paisley Park. He was found in the elevator, the very place he had once linked to evil. Coincidence? Maybe. But for those who had followed his warnings about the music industry, it felt like a message. Even more unsettling were his final words to fans. Days before his death, Prince hosted a party at Paisley Park. He seemed frail, but told the crowd, "Wait a few days before you waste any prayers." To some, it was a joke. To others, it was a prophecy. Around the same time, he posted a photo on social media with the caption, "Just when you thought you were safe." The message was quickly deleted, but screenshots spread online. People couldn't shake the feeling that Prince knew something was coming, that he felt the walls closing in, that he expected the machine he had spent his life fighting to finally come for him. And then came the theories. Some believed Warner Brothers had never forgiven him for waging war against their empire. Others pointed fingers at the industry elites he had openly criticized. Many wondered if his death was less about pills and more about silencing a voice that refused to bow down. Even Kanye West, never shy about controversy, said Prince's death didn't make sense. He compared himself to Prince, calling them both warriors against corporations. Prince had slave on his face. Kanye reminded people he was fighting the same fight I'm fighting right now. To Prince's fans, the official narrative felt incomplete. A healthy man doesn't just collapse from counterfeit pills without a deeper story behind it. Not when he spent years calling out the very system that profited from the deaths of artists before him. Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, Tupac, names that raised the same suspicions. Prince's death wasn't just a tragedy. It was a question mark. And to this day, many believe the real answer lies not in an overdose, but in the machine he tried so hard to expose. When news of Prince's death broke, fans were heartbroken. But as the shock settled, something even heavier began to creep in, the belief that Prince had seen it coming. This wasn't just hindsight bias. In the weeks leading up to his death, Prince left behind breadcrumbs that made people believe he was sending messages, almost like a man who knew his time was running out. One of the clearest examples came just days before he passed. Prince hosted what would turn out to be his final public appearance at Paisley Park. He looked thinner, frailer, but still full of energy and spirit. He played music, smiled at fans, and then dropped a line that sent chills through the room. "Wait a few days before you waste any prayers." At the time, some people laughed. Maybe it was just Prince being cryptic as he often was. But when the news broke days later, Those words took on a much darker meaning. It sounded less like a joke and more like a warning, almost as if he knew prayers were about to pour in, but too late to save him. Then there was the Instagram post. Prince uploaded a photo of himself in a purple outfit, standing powerfully with the caption, "Just when you thought you were safe." Hours later, it was deleted, but not before fans screenshot it and spread it across the internet. To this day, people debate what it meant. Safe from what? Safe from who? And why delete it so quickly? It wasn't the only time Prince dropped hints. In interviews years earlier, he spoke in ways that sounded eerily prophetic. He once said, "There's no stopping what's about to come. You can't stop it. You can only prepare for it." At the time, people thought he was talking about the music industry, about streaming, about ownership. But after his death, those words felt different, like foreshadowing of something more personal. Friends close to him said he had been unusually reflective in the weeks before his passing. He talked about legacy more than usual, about making sure his work lived beyond him. He was also reportedly reorganizing aspects of his estate and catalog, as if trying to lock everything in place, almost like a man preparing for the end. And then there's the elevator, the detail nobody can shake. Prince had told a friend years earlier, "Do you know what the elevator is? The elevator is the devil." To find him dead inside an elevator felt like a script written by fate or by design. Add in the lyrics from Let's Go Crazy, "Don't let the elevator bring us down," and it was too haunting to ignore. To fans, these weren't coincidences. They were signs. They believed Prince knew the machine was closing in. He had fought too hard, spoken too loudly, exposed too much. And in the end, he paid the ultimate price. Conspiracy or not, the eerie predictions made Prince's death feel less like an accident and more like a story we were never meant to fully understand. And if Prince really did predict his own end, it raises a question that has haunted fans ever since. Did he know they were coming for him, or was he simply aware that anyone who challenges the system too loudly eventually meets the same fate? When Prince passed, a lot of people thought his fight would die with him. After all, who else had the guts to call out the music industry so openly, so aggressively, and so consistently? But not long after, another name kept surfacing in connection to his legacy: Kanye West. Kanye, love him or hate him, has never been afraid to ruffle feathers. And in many ways, his fight mirrors Prince's fight, almost step for step, where Prince scrolled "slave" on his cheek to expose contracts. Kanye took to Twitter and ranted for hours about record deals being modern-day slavery. Where Prince refused to stay quiet at award shows, Kanye grabbed the mic and said things the industry didn't want to hear. People called Prince crazy for changing his name to a symbol. They called Kanye crazy for demanding ownership of his masters. Different eras, same insults, but in both cases, the so-called madness looked more like clarity. They saw the system for what it was, and they refused to play along. Kanye himself has openly acknowledged the connection. In interviews, he said Prince understood what he was trying to do. He even revealed that Prince gave him the song "Jail," not just as music, but as a passing of the torch. Kanye saw himself as continuing the mission Prince started, breaking free from corporate ownership and demanding independence for artists. Even industry veterans noticed the similarities. L.A. Reid, a legendary music executive, once said Kanye was the modern-day Prince, not in terms of instruments or style, but in terms of influence. Prince used guitars and pianos to shape culture. Kanye used beats, samples, and hip-hop. Both were kings in their own lanes. But it's not just about music. It's about defiance. Prince fought Warner Bros. With lawsuits, speeches, and bold stunts. Kanye fights Universal, Sony, and streaming platforms with rants, leaked contracts, and relentless pressure. Both understood that the biggest enemy of an artist isn't a rival musician. It's the system that profits from their work while giving them pennies back. And just like Prince, Kanye has paid the price. He's been ridiculed, blacklisted in some spaces, and painted as unstable, yet every time he bounces back louder than before. To his supporters, that resilience proves he's cut from the same cloth as Prince. To his critics, it makes him dangerous. The parallel is impossible to ignore. Prince in the 90s, Kanye in the 2010s and beyond. Both men saw the machine for what it was. Both tried to break free, and both faced backlash for daring to speak out. The only difference is that Prince didn't survive long enough to see his warnings taken seriously. Kanye, meanwhile, is still standing for now. But history has a pattern, and Prince's story is a reminder of how far the machine will go to protect itself, which raises an uncomfortable question. Will Kanye be allowed to finish the fight, or will he face the same fate as the artists who came before him? If Prince represented resistance and Kanye picked up the torch, then Diddy became the opposite. The man who played the game, thrived in it, and according to countless accusations, turned into the very kind of figure Prince had warned us about. The connection between Diddy and Warner Brothers is crucial. While Prince was fighting for ownership, Diddy was striking deals that gave Warner a 50% stake in Bad Boy Records. On the surface, this looked like black excellence, an independent label rising to mainstream power. But in reality, the partnership ensured that Warner still had its hand in every pocket. They marketed, distributed, and profited from Bad Boy's entire catalog, from Biggie to Faith Evans to Diddy himself. Diddy once bragged about the deal, saying it guaranteed his label the right financial backing to remain a force in the industry. But what he called backing, Prince would have called control. The exact thing Prince tried to escape, Diddy embraced, and he didn't stop there. Over the years, more and more former Bad Boy artists came forward, painting the same picture. They said Diddy locked them into contracts that left them broke, even as their music made millions. Mays accused him of selling his publishing to the highest bidder instead of giving it back to the man who created the songs. The Locks went on live radio and called him a thief. Danity Kane described working themselves to exhaustion only to see nothing in return. Day 26, Toto, and other groups told similar stories. To Prince, watching all of this must have been frustrating. He fought Warner to free himself, only to watch Diddy create his own Warner-approved plantation. And worse, Diddy seemed to enjoy it. He wasn't rebelling against the system. He was replicating it. And then there were the lawsuits. In recent years, Diddy has faced a storm of allegations ranging from financial exploitation to far darker accusations. Suddenly, the whispers about his infamous freak-off parties didn't sound so far-fetched. The secrecy, the ban on personal security, the bizarre rituals, all of it painted a disturbing picture. Jason Lee's story about the first Diddy party at Prince's house becomes even more chilling in hindsight. Maybe Prince already knew what kind of man he was dealing with, which is why he kept his distance. The irony couldn't be stronger. Prince, the rebel, fought Warner and paid the ultimate price. Diddy, the insider, partnered with Warner and built his empire on the backs of artists. And when you line up the timeline, it feels less like coincidence and more like a reflection of the two paths an artist can take: resist the system and risk destruction, or join the system and risk your soul. By the time lawsuits started piling up against Diddy, fans couldn't help but think of Prince, because decades earlier, Prince had already warned us that this was coming. He had already told us that the machine rewards those who play along and punishes those who resist. And if you believe Prince was silenced for speaking out, then Diddy's continued success makes the story even darker, because it means the machine didn't just survive, it won. By now, the picture should be clear. Prince wasn't just another musician. He was a man on a mission, a rebel who refused to bow down to the industry machine. From his first contract with Warner Brothers to his final days at Paisley Park, He fought for ownership, independence, and truth. He branded himself a slave, changed his name to a symbol, sued billion-dollar corporations, and risked everything to show artists what was really happening behind the curtain. At the same time, Diddy was building his empire by making deals with the very corporations Prince despised. While Prince was begging for freedom, Diddy was striking partnerships that ensured Warner stayed in control. And while Prince distanced himself from Diddy's notorious parties, stories about secrecy, exploitation, and control began to haunt Diddy's reputation. To many fans, Diddy wasn't just part of the system, he was the system. Then came Jay-Z. For a moment, Prince thought he had found an ally. Tidal was supposed to be different. Jay-Z sold it as a platform for artists, by artists. But when Prince's music showed up on Tidal without proper authorization, that trust shattered. Another betrayal, another lawsuit, another reminder that even those who claim to fight for independence sometimes fall into the same traps. And in the years after Prince's death, Kanye West emerged as the torchbearer. Just like Prince, he was called crazy. Just like Prince, he attacked contracts, masters, and ownership. Just like Prince, he faced ridicule for saying the things the industry didn't want to hear. Kanye wasn't Prince's clone. He was his successor in the war against the machine. Put it all together, and the story looks less like a coincidence and more like a pattern. Prince fought the system and died under mysterious circumstances. Diddy played the system and became one of its most powerful faces, only to face accusations years later that echoed the corruption Prince warned us about. Jay-Z positioned himself as an ally, but got caught in the same cycle of questionable deals. Kanye fights the system today, but the question is, how long will he be allowed to keep fighting before the machine comes for him too? And that's the question that lingers over Prince's legacy. Did he really die from counterfeit pills, or was he silenced because he wouldn't stop speaking? Was the elevator just a tragic setting, or a chilling symbol of the devil he said was chasing him? Was his final warning, just when you thought you were safe, a coincidence, or a message that we all missed until it was too late? The truth is, we may never know, but what we do know is that Prince wasn't just an artist, he was a prophet. He warned us about the contracts, the exploitation, the lies. He warned us that the industry doesn't forgive rebels, and he warned us that the industry doesn't forgive rebels, and he warned us that if you play their game, you lose. So now the question falls to us. Do we believe the official story, or do we believe Prince? Because if he was right, and everything we've seen from Diddy, Jay-Z, and even Kanye suggests he was, then Prince didn't just die in 2016. He was taken, silenced, erased for saying the things the machine didn't want us to hear. And maybe that's the real legacy of Prince. Not just the music, not just the concerts, not just Purple Rain, but the warning, the courage to look the industry in the eye and say, I see you, I know what you're doing, and I won't play along. The machine may have claimed his life, but it didn't erase his message. Because as long as artists like Kanye keep fighting, as long as fans keep asking questions, and as long as we remember Prince not just as a star, but as a soldier, his voice still echoes. The only question left is, will we listen? Prince's story doesn't end with his death. It lingers in every contract dispute, every artist lawsuit, every whisper about exploitation in the music industry today. His fight wasn't just about music, it was about freedom. He wanted artists to understand that ownership isn't just about money, it's about survival. Meanwhile, Diddy's empire shows what happens when you play the game instead of fighting it. Jay-Z's Tidal saga proves that even allies can get caught in the cycle. And Kanye's battle shows us the fight isn't over. It's just moved into a new generation. But here's the real question. Was Prince silenced for exposing the system, or was his death just a tragic accident? Was the elevator a coincidence, or a final symbol of the devil he warned us about. And if Prince really predicted his own end, what does that mean for artists still speaking out today? Some say he died from pills. Others believe he died because he wouldn't stop telling the truth. Maybe both are true, maybe neither. The only thing we know for certain is that Prince spent his life fighting a machine that still hasn't stopped running. So, what do you think? Did Prince's battle with Warner Brothers, his distance from Diddy, and his betrayal by Jay-Z ultimately lead to his mysterious end? Or are fans reading too deeply into his warnings and symbols? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your theory. And remember, if Prince was right about the machine, then this story isn't just about him. It's about every artist who dares to fight back. It's about the industry we still support with every stream and every download. And it's about us deciding whether we'll keep ignoring the truth or finally face it, because the machine doesn't stop until someone breaks it.